Good evening, Crowley ISD family. It is 7 o'clock. We're super excited to welcome you to a very special town hall that the students have named The Comeback. We've had many town halls here in Crowley, but I believe we have saved the best for last. We're joined by district leaders and our superintendent. And tonight we will be reviewing our plans and asking the most important people in the district, our students, to ask us questions, to challenge us, and help us clarify what they need to maximize their educational experience. At this time, I would like to allow our student leaders to introduce themselves. There you are. Good evening. I want you to introduce yourself. I'm going to call your name, your first name, and if you would share your full name, your grade level, and give a shout out to your campus, that would be awesome. So let's start with Addison.
My name is Addison Faith Mathis. I'm going to the 5th grade, and my campus is June Davis Elementary.
All right, welcome Addison, thank you. Next we have Caitlin.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Buck and I'm a senior this year at Crowley Collegiate Academy at the CTE Center.
Hi Caitlin. On my screen next I see Kennedy Jackson. We can't hear you, Kennedy, for some reason.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Kennedy Jackson. I'm currently a senior at North Crowley High School.
All right. I thought you were going to say the North Crowley High School. All right. Next up, we have James. Can't hear you, James. There you go. Okay. Yes.
Hi, I'm James Ethan Hunt from Summer Creek Middle School. I'm going to 8th grade.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Next, we have Rose.
Hi, I'm Rose Jones. I'm an 8th grader this year and I go to Alley Middle School.
Welcome, Rose. Next up, we have Elijah.
Hello, Crowley ISD. My name is Strong, and I go to the one and only North Crowley High School, and I'm going into my senior year.
That's exciting. All right. We have Soraya joining us.
Hi, my name is Soraya Stewart, and I am a 12th grader at North Crowley High School.
Please introduce yourself, Ashley.
Hello, my name is Ashley Hobson, and I'm currently a junior at the Crowley Collegiate Academy, which is at the CTE Center.
Welcome. Next up, we have Ashton. If you would introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Ashton Turner. I'm a senior at Crowley High School.
Okay. And Kennedy Wallace.
Hi, my name is Kennedy Wallace, and I'm a senior at Crowley High School.
Okay. All right, and we also have district leaders joining us. I'll introduce myself. I guess I didn't do that. I'm Marlis Diggles, and I am the Director of Strategic Marketing and Recruitment. Dr. Berry.
Good evening, all. My name is Dr. Pam Berry. I'm the Executive Director for Secondary Leadership.
And Mr. Kirshner.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see you all this evening. I'm Anthony Kirshner, Executive Director of Communications and Marketing. We're excited to hear from our students tonight.
Dr. Mosley.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Helena Mosley. I'm Executive Director for Elementary Leadership in Crowley ISD. I'm excited to be with you this afternoon.
Mr. Keith.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Nick Keith. I'm the Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and it's great to be on here with you tonight.
Mr. Handy, have you joined us all the way? In saving the best for last, our superintendent, Dr. Michael McFarland.
Hello, I'm Mike McFarland. Definitely glad to be on the town hall, on the call, on the Zoom and YouTube and Facebook. Just glad to be with you all virtually, and just looking forward to what y'all have to say. We're going to share with you all some of our ideas, but the most important part of tonight for me is to hear from you and hear your wishes, your desires, your aspirations as we move forward. Thank you all, and I am the superintendent of the Crowley Independent School District.
Crowley Pride.
Unified.
All right. When we asked our students to send us their questions, they went above and beyond. They sent us over 30 questions. At this time, we'll be listening to Mr. Keith share a presentation about a day in the life of a virtual student. He'll be followed by Dr. Mosley and Dr. Berry sharing information about a day in the life of an in-person student. So we've embedded 11 of those 30 questions into the presentation. And students, when you see a question with your name on it or from your school, please unmute and read the question, pose the question as it's being presented. Once we're finished with the presentations, hopefully we'll have time to follow up and just dialogue, spend some time asking additional questions and getting clarification that you all need. This is your meeting, and so I'm going to turn it over at this point to Nicholas Keith for a day in the life of a virtual student.
Okay, so good evening again, everybody. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to take a walk through a day in the life of an elementary student and also a day in the life of a secondary student when it comes to virtual learning. So we just want to help you be clear on what that's going to look like. And then as we field your questions, we can clear up anything that we may not have gone through in the presentation. So just starting right here, we need to define 3 words first. So those 3 words we need to define are the words live, independent, and offline, because you're going to see these all through this presentation. And so let's start with the word live. And a live lesson in virtual learning is like what we're doing right now. So it's face-to-face, we'll be using Zoom. It's real-time interaction with your teacher, and it's basically a virtual in-person class. And if you've heard the word synchronous thrown around, that's what we mean when we say live. It's happening in real time. So the second piece here is the word independent. And with the word independent, we're talking about lessons that are self-paced, so you can work through those at your own pace. They may include some pre-recorded video instruction from your teachers. It may be online or it may happen offline. And also that ties back to the word asynchronous. So if you've heard that word asynchronous, that's what we mean when we talk about independent learning. And then the last word to define is the word offline. And offline, of course, just means it's not completed on a device. So those 3 words you'll see show up as we go through these virtual learning schedules: live, independent, and offline. So we'll start with an elementary student schedule here. And we're looking at a kindergarten schedule, but every elementary schedule is basically the same. And so you'll see those same colors there that we saw in the words that we just talked about. So you'll see some green, some blue, and some yellow. And the green means those are live lessons with your teacher on Zoom. The blue means it's independent on your own and you can work at your own pace. And the yellow means it's offline. So it's a lot to look at an entire week. So let's just start by looking just at a Monday here. And you'll see that this student in the morning, every block of time there is green. So that means that in the morning, this student has reading, math, science or social studies, and then an intervention block and some social emotional lessons live with their teacher. So they log on to Zoom first thing, and they're in those classes throughout the day with some breaks kind of built in throughout the day. And then you'll see, of course, there's lunch there in yellow, that's offline. And then we move into the afternoon and you'll notice that the colors change. And so for this student in the afternoon, they have this blue independent block. And so this is your specials time, this is reading, math, and science that is similar to what you did in the morning, but it's independent work. And it doesn't have to be done at this time. If it's more helpful for you to wait until your parents come home from work at the end of the day and work with them, you can do those assignments then as well. So if you look at the schedule, you notice all of the green is in the morning and all of the blue for the independent work is in the afternoon. But we also have an option for families where those can be flipped. And so we have the schedule I just showed you, which is morning live, and the schedule that you see there on the right, which is afternoon live. So let's just look at these side by side. We'll just take a Monday again. And so when you look at these two different schedules side by side, where parents can choose whether they want to do morning or afternoon live, you'll see there the morning block of live instruction, and on the right, you'll see the afternoon block of live instruction. But then right here, everybody in the class is together, just like you would come together for a morning circle at the start of the day, you come together in the middle of the day for that time together as a group. So I'll go ahead and pause there for a minute, Mr. Kirchner or Ms. Diggles, to see if there were any questions that came up in the chat as I was going along, or if there's anything that I can answer so far.
Actually, I think the next slide is a question, Mr. Keith. Take a look.
So this one just moves on to the Friday schedule here.
Okay. One question that came up from Crowley Collegiate, what if a virtual student requires one-on-one after school or outside tutoring? What would the student's responsibilities be, and how would that work if a student needed tutoring in a virtual setting?
Great question. So of course, we encourage students to seek out their teachers anytime they need additional help, but then we'll also be working with teachers to set up those after-school tutoring opportunities, both for face-to-face students and for virtual students. All right, so we'll go ahead and keep going and we'll see some of the other questions as we go. And so we're still on the elementary student schedule, but I just want to take a look at Fridays briefly, because it looks a little bit different in virtual learning. So here's that week-long schedule, but we'll just go ahead and zoom in on the Friday here. And so if you'll notice on Fridays have a block of independent work at the beginning. So that's where you can work at your own pace, at your own speed, on what your teacher's given you. And teachers will also be available through office hours. Now, office hours are really important because if you're working on something and you get stuck, you can just jump on a Zoom link with your teacher and have access to them to ask them your question. And then you'll also notice there are these enrichment and intervention blocks. If you were part of our summer programming, we had some live enrichment opportunities on Fridays for students. These will be similar to that. So these are optional. You don't have to be a part of these, but we'd encourage you to jump onto our enrichment sessions on Friday. And then lunch, and then with an independent work session again to finish out that Friday. And so Ms. Diggles, I think this is the question that you might have been referring to there about the tutoring. Yeah. And so before I move on to the secondary schedule, any questions on the elementary schedule that may have popped up in the chat or anything from our live stream? Good. All right. Then let's move into a secondary student schedule. So looking at middle school and high school. So at a really high level, a couple things to keep in mind. First of all, secondary schedules are a mix of live and independent learning, so that one-on-one interaction with your teacher, but also the self-paced. It follows your campus schedule, so you just go period 1, period 2, period 3 through the day. There is an advisory class and office hours if you need additional help. And it gives students the opportunity to take hybrid or in-person only courses once we get to that October 5th date where students come back face-to-face or virtual. And because it follows the campus bell schedule, it also makes it easier for students to go back and forth between virtual and face-to-face if they decide to change. So this is an example of a secondary student schedule. So you can see there on the left-hand side, periods 1 through 7, the advisory time, the lunch, and the office hours at the end of the day. And you'll also notice it's a mix of green and blue mainly, like our elementary schedule was. So just keeping in mind that green are those live classes and blue are those independent classes that are self-paced. So let's just take a look at that first period class here. So for this student, as they go through their week, on Monday, their first period English class is green, so it's live. So this is a focused live lesson with a Crowley teacher. And then that'd be followed by 15 to 20 minutes of student work time where the teacher stays on the Zoom call and is available if you have any questions. And then the teacher, of course, checks in at the end of class using a tool like Pear Deck to make sure that students understand what's been taught that day. So Monday and Tuesday may both be live days in this class, but if we slide over to Wednesday, you'll notice that that's in blue. And so that is an independent day. And so this day may include a 3 to 5 minute pre-recorded lesson. Then there may be some self-paced student work in the platform the teacher is using that day. And then you'd submit your work through Google Classroom by the end of the day. And so you'll see that mix of green and blue across the week, and then also up and down as we look at Monday. So you'll notice as a student goes through their day, it's live first on Monday, then independent, live again. And if we expand that out, you'll notice that there's a mix of live and independent all through the week. So one of the important things is not to have you on a device all day, but to give you a mix of live lessons with your teacher, as well as an opportunity to work at your own pace. So I'll go ahead and open that all the way back up, and you can see that mix of green and blue, those live and independent lessons. And then on Friday, that's a fully independent day, and it looks a lot like what the elementary schedule did. Your teachers are available for office hours to provide additional support, and that's a day for you to work on assignments at your own pace. So I'll go ahead and move to this question here, Ms. Diggles.
Kennedy, did you want to read your question? Kennedy Wallace, are you with us?
Yes, ma'am.
Love technology. While Kennedy is getting that question together, James, you asked me a question when I first started speaking to you. If you'll ask this one, but there was another one you asked as well.
Yes, ma'am. So when we had independent schoolwork close to the end of last year, at the end of the semester, if you didn't finish your work during the week, since it was independent, you could do it on the weekends. So would the schoolwork be open on weekends for us to finish?
That's a great question, James. So just like when you would normally go to school in person and your teacher would set those due dates for you, there would definitely be some assignments that would extend over the weekend. Some things might be due in class that day, other things might take a few days.
You also asked me, James, about transitions, even when we're virtual. You asked me about, would there be any time in between those blue and green classes to run and get some water, run to the restroom?
Yeah.
Talk to Mr. Keith a little bit about that question.
So since we're on virtual, it should be easier to transition. You won't need to ask the teacher to go to the bathroom in between your class, but since you have to log on to the next class and you can't do it while you're in the one class, how would you balance that out?
Great question. I like the way you're thinking ahead, James. So what we're doing is we're going to put everything in Google Classroom, so it'll be really easy to jump from your first period teacher's Google Classroom and that Zoom to the second one. And then you will have some transition time between each of those class periods, just like you would have a passing period at school, just to get up, stretch, move around, take a break. Because even as grown folks, we don't want to be sitting all day.
Okay, thank you.
Did you want to go back to Kennedy's question? I can read it, or I see Kennedy's there. Her question was, how will in-class instruction be different than online learning?
And that's a great question, Kennedy. You know, there's actually going to be a lot of similarities on those live days for virtual learning, just like there would be with in-class instruction. So in the same way that you would usually go into a face-to-face class, and your teacher would teach, and then you would practice, and your teacher would check in on you to make sure that you're getting it. And then by the end, they're checking to make sure you understood the lesson for the day. Those live virtual lessons will look very similar to that. On the independent days, it may look just a little bit different because you are working at your own pace. And that also means that you don't have to do it during that class period. It just needs to get done on that day. So time management becomes really important, but you also have the flexibility to work on those independent assignments throughout the day, as long as you get them done by the time the day's finished.
Any of our North Crowley students want to read this question for us? North Crowley students.
Yes, I'll read it.
Go right ahead.
Okay. How can educators and administrators ensure the active participation of students throughout the virtual learning process?
So first of all, just let me say I love that this question came from the student. It makes me really happy inside. So we know that it can be difficult during virtual learning to keep kids fully engaged. It's tough no matter which side of the Zoom meeting that you're on. And so the district has purchased some tools. One of them is called Pear Deck. And with Pear Deck, the way that it works is it's actually a part of the teacher's live session while they are going through their lesson. So the teacher asks a question, and then the student, and then you can answer in Pear Deck, and the teacher immediately has your responses. And so that's just one of the ways during the lesson we're working to keep students actively engaged. But then with our extended office hours that we have for teachers, really helping teachers to reach out to students, follow up with them, and make sure that they're engaged overall and that they're comfortable with what they're learning and they're comfortable in virtual learning is going to be a big part of our success this fall.
May I piggyback off of another question right quick?
Of course. Yeah.
I just wrote this down. What is expected of the students, like while participating in virtual learning, you know, sitting at a computer and things like that? Like what is expected?
So, you know, for adults, active engagement looks different. So for some people, they want to have their camera on, they want to be right there in the middle of it, they want to unmute and they want to ask questions, right? And for other grown people, they prefer to have their camera off and put questions in the chat and participate in a Pear Deck or post things, you know, that way. I think it works the same way for students. So I think really we as teachers and educators have to make it comfortable for you, Kennedy, to participate in an online lesson. And that means at the level of engagement that you're comfortable with. And that may change from day to day. And so I think it's just really working with our teachers to make sure that you're comfortable in online learning, because it's a learning experience for all of us.
Great question. Crowley Collegiate?
I can ask this one. So at least at our old building, before we switched the CTE Center, we had a library and we could print there. And I'm assuming the same will be at the new center. And I'm assuming the same is true for multiple school buildings. So I wanted to ask, what if a student chooses to do virtual learning, but they do not have access to printing and similar functions at home? Will they still have access to these services at school? Would there be specific times those students could go to the school?
So one of the things we're working on right now, Caitlin, is how does it work like if a student comes up to school for band, or if they have to come up to school to do welding, or to come up for any of those things where otherwise they do virtual learning. And so this question right here falls under that same umbrella. So we'll be working with the campuses to set up times where you have access to the things that you need on campus, and you would just go through the same check-in procedure at the campus, temperature checks and those types of things that a student would go through who's there every day.
Hey, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to interrupt or anything. I have a question about the band thing. So we did band virtually and everyone was just fine. Grades were the same, if not better. But some kids, some parents have to work a lot during the day and they might not have the time to take their kid to the school for 45 minutes or something and then pick them up 45 minutes later.
You want to know how can we help to navigate that?
Yes, ma'am.
That's a good question, James. And so what we've done is we've looked at every course that we offer, and we've had a lot of conversations about Okay, how do we make these available to every student? So most of the classes that we're offering can be completed 100% virtually. And then some classes fall into a hybrid category where it's mostly virtual with some periodic content coming up to the campus. And so for each band, each director, each fine arts class, the teacher will work through what are the requirements of that hybrid class in order to come up to campus. So you can look for more information from on that from the teacher who teaches that course.
Okay.
Do you have one more question, Mr. Keith, or does that conclude your questions?
That's everything that I have. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Berry to start.
Ms. Diggles and Mr. Keith, we do have some questions from the chat about virtual learning. A lot of students and parents are asking, when will they be able to see their schedules for virtual learning to start September 8th?
So what we're doing right now is the commitment window for virtual and face-to-face closed last night at midnight. So we're taking all of those numbers, taking all of those names and working with the principals this week to make sure those students are seated in the right courses. And so we're working as quickly as we can to get that information.
Right, and then we had a question about those Fridays during virtual learning. Would there be assignments given on Fridays that are due on Friday? Does that make sense? Would something be assigned that day and then due that same day, or would that be for later the next week?
Oh, so there may be occasionally an assignment that is assigned that way, and one of the reasons for that is because when we take attendance for students through independent learning, one of the ways that we do that is they have to submit an assignment. And so if it is an assignment that's due the same day, it will be manageable. You know, we're working through what is the amount of work a student can do in the day. And so that is a possibility that there will be Friday work due that same day.
Thank you to everyone that's watching on YouTube and Facebook right now. More than 250 people watching this presentation that's being recorded and will be available on our website afterward. So keep sending those questions in. If we can't get to all of them tonight, we're capturing those and we'll be addressing those in future communications. So thank you all so much for participating on YouTube and Facebook. Ms. Diggles.
We're ready to hear from Dr. Mosley.
Thanks, Mrs. Diggles. Mr. Keith, thank you for that journey in the life of a virtual student, virtual learning. And so now let us jump right into the day in the life of our face-to-face students. And by way of introduction, let me introduce you to our elementary student, Larry, and our secondary student, LaToya. Larry, let's just say Larry is a third grader at Pointer Elementary School, and perhaps LaToya is an eighth grader at one of the middle schools. Dr. Berry will tell us which campus. I'm getting that confused right this moment. But what I want is, go ahead, Dr. Berry.
All right, LaToya is coming straight from North Crowley High School, Miss Dr. Mosley.
Okay, all righty. So for Larry and LaToya, who are siblings coming from the same household, we first began with Larry and LaToya will open up their day at home together, and they're going to ask an adult to support them and help them to take their temperatures. What we know about Larry and LaToya is that if they have a temperature above 100 degrees or show any other COVID-19 symptoms, they are going to stay at home. But if Larry and LaToya have no symptoms, they are going to wash their hands for at least 20 minutes, and they're both going to make sure that they have with them their face coverings, reusable water bottles, and the other supplies that they need for the journey, for their journey for the day, and they are going to head to the bus stop. Dr. Berry, anything else LaToya will need for her day?
No, I think LaToya should be good to go after her 20-second hand wash.
Absolutely, for her 20-second hand wash. I think I said 20 minutes. And so we know that once Larry and LaToya arrive to the bus stop, at the bus stop, they are going to make sure that they have their face coverings on and that they stand at least 6 feet apart from other students. When the bus arrives and they prepare to board the bus, they both will use the hand sanitizer that's provided on the bus for them, making sure that they stay sanitized. And when weather permits, we're going to make sure that the windows are open for ventilation. We know that that's another safety measure that we use in order to keep our students safe. And oh, don't forget, if you see Rex on the bus and you see a symbol here for don't sit on Rex, remember, Rex is our universal symbol that allows us to know don't sit in this seated area because it will eliminate the 6 feet of spacing that we need between you. So we're asking and using the Rex symbol for kind of our elementary students, but we want you secondary guys to honor it as well. Make sure you don't sit on Rex. Make sure that you use some of the other designated seated areas. Dr. Berry?
All right, thank you, Dr. Mosley. So after we are departing from the bus, our students will be arriving at school, and Larry and Latoya again have their face coverings on. They are going to find their designated entry, and that will be a little different at each campus. We're going to streamline, attempt to streamline entries at campuses. So you may find that where you used to enter a building may have changed, where it may just be one entry. At a maximum, it would be 2 entries, because you will find that your teachers and staff members will be standing at the doors waiting to greet you, ensuring that face coverings are on at that time. Again, as you enter the buildings, there'll be hand sanitizing stations along the way. Latoya is going to grab her grab and go breakfast, and Dr. Mosley will be talking a little bit more about lunches later on, but you'll grab your grab and go breakfast along the way to class. Larry, however, as Dr. Mosley will state, will be enjoying breakfast in the classroom. Our high school and middle school students will be grabbing those at somewhere else along the journey. That might be in the cafeteria. It may be in one of our mobile stations where you pick that up and head on to classroom, where there will be a teacher at your classroom door in both cases that is waiting to greet you with the happy good morning. And then they will also be taking your temperature before you are able to enter into the classroom. For our high school students, you will also at that point have a QR code or some survey that you will scan into for your morning questions related to any other health questionnaires that we may have.
And I think, Dr. Berry, we had a lot of questions about lunch and about specials. And Addison Mathis is one of our elementary students who posed a question. Addison, would you like to read your question for us?
Yes, ma'am. How will our schedule and lunch be structured, and how will our special classes be handled?
Thank you for that question, Addison. It was one that was a hot topic. So let's talk about how will our specials be addressed first and foremost. What we know is that your classes like PE and music will be outside as often as we can have them. As much as we can use our outside learning spaces, we're going to do that. It provides us that great ventilation that will allow us to be able to distance ourselves even more, but also have great, healthy, clean air to be breathing. We also know that when we have to use the inside of our building for PE or music, that again will be distanced 6 feet apart. We'll have lots of ventilation in the area. For the activities that will be occurring, we're going to make sure that while they are structured activities, you'll have your individualized equipment. We've eliminated the use of sharing equipment and instruments or any of those kinds of things. And so we've made sure that activity time is safe for you. And then there is lunch. And this, again, Addison, was a hot topic. When you leave your classroom, you're going to journey with your teacher down the marked hallways. You're going to stop at a sanitation station area so that you can make sure that you're scrubbing your hands for those 20 seconds and doing a really, really great job of that and making sure that you're ready to go on to get your lunch. Again, as much as we can, we want to be out in the fresh air. So your teachers are working and your principals are working to identify outside eating areas. But in the instances where we aren't able to be outside, you'll come to the cafeteria, and we've worked really hard to make sure that it is as contactless as it can be. So your ID badge will be scanned so that it can take the information for you to be given a lunch. At that time, you'll just pick up your lunch and you'll go to a cafeteria table. All of our tables have been turned in one direction. It'll have those plexiglass, those clear partitions that are up on the lunch table for you. You'll again be limited to the number of students that can sit at the table with you because we want you to remain 6 feet apart. So we've made it as safe as possible as we can and made sure that we have, again, the spacing that you need in order to maintain and make sure that everyone is safe. And we use the plexiglass partitions because at that time, you'll have to release your mask, but you'll have a barrier around you and your neighbor. Thanks for that question, Addison. Dr. Berry, what's going to happen with our secondary student?
All right, and I think I think we have a lunch slide, but I'll go ahead and kind of lean into a little bit. Lunches will look a lot similar in regard to the plexiglass and things that will be up for you all. However, in the secondary spaces, your campus pandemic response teams, as we're calling, are working really hard to also, in addition to that, identify some alternative lunch locations for our secondary campuses. So as you travel onto your lunches, as you know, you already have access to some of your alternative lunch spots where you can pick up a quick bite at the bistro, you can go into the cafeteria, and the same to be true of our lunch spaces. We hope to identify some locations where there are outside opportunities when the weather is good, as well as inside opportunities in the building that may not be limited to the cafeteria. And so in addition to what we'll see in the elementary, you may see some of those alternative spaces pop up as well.
Rose, you had a question regarding scheduling.
So will our schedules change whenever we move to in-person school from virtual?
Very good question, Rose. And I will tell you, Rose, we have been working very hard to get those schedules as aligned as we possibly can. As you know, looking at the virtual learning environment, there are many similarities where you would just transition into that same period and or same teacher. And so our hope is that as we are designing the master schedule, and I'm so excited that you asked that question and you begin to get schedules, that you will see some parallels where there's not a lot of change in terms of time. Obviously location will change, but there won't be a lot of changes in terms of time and teachers. But we also know that with you coming face to face and being able to get to the CTE courses and some of the other courses, there may be some minor shifts, but definitely we appreciate that question because that's going to push us to continue to look at the face-to-face schedule and try to align those as closely as possible. So thank you for leaning into that one with us.
I have a question. So I was wondering with in-person learning, so students are going to be in person and the teacher is going to be teaching them. So that is the same teacher going to also have to teach them with students who are going to be online? Is it going to be during the same time? How is the teacher going to manage teaching both in person and online in the same day?
All right, Mr. Keith, if you are still on with us, you may have some information to provide in that regard. That is a great question, Ashley.
That's a great question.
So Ashley, whenever you want a job in curriculum, I have one for you. So that is a great question. So that's what we're working on right now. So I mentioned earlier that the commitment form for virtual and in-person closed last night at midnight, right? And so this is the first day where we've had solid information on how many students want to go virtually and how many will be coming face to face. So when we get that information to your principals, that's when they start to look at your classes and say, hey, can we do a class that's all virtual students? So that teacher just teaches virtual kids during that time. Can we do a class that's all face-to-face students so they only teach face-to-face? Or do we have to do a mix? So we're working on solving that problem like every other school district is. And that's a phenomenal question. I appreciate you asking that.
Thank you.
So much great questions, students, and that kind of leads us into our next piece of just what will a lot of the questions are centered around just that general question of what will learning during the school day look like. And when I do get back to the classroom with my face-to-face teacher, what are some of the things that that I can expect? And obviously wearing face coverings in the classroom will still be required. Social distancing from others with assigned seats. Classrooms will have seating charts in the event that we would have someone that may have tested positive or been exposed to someone. We want to be able to know where were students sitting in classrooms, who did they come in contact with, where were they in the building. So there will be our favorite secondary, there will be some assigned seats. So you have your own learning area. However, desks will be sanitized, spacing apart and facing the same direction. We'll have a sanitation schedule each day that you are in there at the end of the day, but we'll also be asking for students to take care of their learning spaces. So there will be materials in there for them to be able to do that as well, for you to be able to wipe down your desks with wipes as well. And so materials, we're asking that students you would be bringing in your own items. And we know we have a team that has done a great job of trying to get just a general supply of materials together for our students. Pens, pencils, those general things, so that every student can come prepared with their own set of items so they do not have to be shared. As it relates specifically to Latoya, who is our middle or secondary school student, again, your campus teams are really working hard. You're probably going to see some adjustments in some of your buildings in terms of how you move. So what used to be maybe the English hallway may now be just a grade level hallway, or it may be just a cohort of you and your peers where you don't move very far. So unless I got to go all the way to a particular class that we can't house in your particular area, you would really have the bulk of your classes in a particular section of the building. And so that when you move, we kind of have limited where you're able to go in the building so that we can create that space for even transitions. And we'll talk about those in a moment as well. And so before you leave your classroom, every class will be furnished with student-friendly products where you would wipe down, again, your own personal learning space to prepare for someone that may be in that desk after you. Dr. Mosley, anything different for Larry there?
Well, I tell you, Dr. Berry, Larry's day looks very much the same also. His schedule is not expected to change and be very different than what he would already have been experiencing. His literacy class, his math class, science and social studies will be, again, very much the same. Larry will have also those responsibilities of helping to keep his individual desk clean and making sure that he has his materials that only he will use every day, his reading materials, his learning materials, his writing journal, and those kinds of things. So his day is very much, looks very much like that of the secondary student in terms of what his responsibilities are to help and keep himself safe, but also his classmates safe as well.
I think we leaned a little bit into lunch early on because there were several questions about that. We talked through lunch is a great deal. Were there any other questions that came to mind when we were speaking through lunch earlier that maybe someone has thought of since then? I definitely can't see hands, so help me out in the chat.
I know, I can't see it either. But I would like to say again, Here's Rex. He'll show up in your cafeteria also, because there will be those designated areas that we want students to sit, and again, maintaining that 6 feet apart.
Dr. Berry and Dr. Mosley,
Sure.
not necessarily related to lunch, but a question did come up in the chat. It says, if a student had a schedule such as mine, this is from Kennedy or Ashton, where they go to multiple classes at different campuses, how would that student get transported to each school in between campuses?
Great question, Kennedy. And I see both of you over there together, you and Ashton, that are probably traveling to the CTE for those wonderful programs that we offer there. And it will look much like what you do this year. So we will still offer a bus that transitions you over to our CTE campuses. The same thing for our 9th grade campuses. You would have the same process when you got to CTE that you did when you entered your home campus. So walking in with your mask, the screener, as well as the temperature checks would occur at CTE Center when you arrived on that campus, but we will still offer the shuttle buses as a service during that time. So that will look very similar to what it looked like in years past.
Kennedy, did that answer your question, or did you want to add to it?
No, that pretty much answered it, but students that still travel from like Crowley to North Crowley for like ROTC or anything, or like dual credit, I know dual credit moved to North Crowley or so.
Yes, great question. So for your ROTC programs, we will again still offer the shuttle that occurs there. For our TCC, that is a great question. So our dual credit courses, as you know, and congrats to everybody who started their first dual credit class today at TCC. So they are going 100% online. So we will be creating a space at your home campus. So when you take your regular classes and you get to that time of day where you would normally leave and go to TCC, you will stay at your home campus and you will report to the classroom that they have assigned for you to have that time to complete your online lesson with the TCC staff there, just as you would if you were at home taking it virtually. Great question. Thank you both. And hope you had a great start to TCC today.
I have a question to piggyback off of Kennedy's question when it comes to CTE courses.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm off mute. I'm sorry. But you know how, I'm not sure if it's for all classes, but when you're a senior and you're in a health endorsement at CTE, you have practicum, and that's 3 class periods long. How would that look?
Again, great questions, right? Same in terms of scheduling. We are going to really have to work hard to look at hours for you to see how we're going to get those in. But definitely the campuses are working with the team at CTE. There's a staff that looks at what are the hours that are required to ensure that you get your certification, your endorsements. And so they'll be looking to make for sure that you have enough hours when you leave to get those certs. And so that will look different per program. But Dr. Warfield, principal at the CTE Center, has worked very diligently with your high school campuses to ensure that those courses are aligned somewhere in your master schedule where you could stay over there for a longer period of time to qualify for those classes. Does that answer your question, Soraya?
Yes, thank you.
A lot of great questions coming through the chat. So I'm going to let you finish up the questions that you have on your PowerPoint, and we're going to answer some of these in the chat. I see you guys asking some good ones.
Okay. I think our next slide, I don't know if we want to interject those questions before we go on. We are about to transition into talking about recess, athletics, etc. So I didn't see any questions in between that and lunchtime. So if you want to drop us some, Ms. Diggles.
We'll actually wait until we're finished with the PowerPoint and we'll address it with the whole group. Yeah.
Perfect. All right.
Well, when we talk about Larry's recess and outdoor learning time and specials, we leaned into that a little bit earlier and talking about specials again, making sure that they are in as much as and as often as we can outside learning areas. But when we are inside, ensuring that that the classes are taking place in really large spaces so that we have the opportunity to distance ourselves. And if there is any equipment that has to be shared, we're making sure that it is sanitized between each use from class to class and student to student. So again, those opportunities are there for the elementary students to still have recess and outdoor learning time. Dr. Berry, for your Latoya.
No worries. And I thought she was on this one. We may have an athletic slide somewhere coming along the way, but although we don't get to enjoy resource or recess just yet, definitely our fine arts programs and things of that nature is there a slide, Kirchner? Okay, I'll wait till we will definitely, because I know there's a lot of questions around that. Dig into that. We'll keep on going to Latoya's transition and restroom breaks. When your bell rings after that first class, you're going to walk to your class. In many cases, you're going to see designated hallways. You may even see designated stairwells that may say this is an up-only stairwell, this is a down-only stairwell. And again, that is really to help with transitions and flow of all of the students that will be walking through the building. You also, in many cases, may see at campuses, and remember earlier, I talked to you guys about a pod in your cohort of classmates that may be in one particular section or hallway of the building. You may move at one time. And so you may be hearing multiple bells throughout the day that indicates your pod is going to move at this time. And then another pod may move at 2 or 3 minutes after you are safely in class. Again, our efforts to limit the amount of people that are transitioning in between the hallways at one time. The same thing with your restrooms. You may have designated restrooms depending on your buildings. Again, you have campus teams that are really working on planning this out based upon the respective layout of your building. But if you're in a pod that may be on this side of the building, you would use the designated restrooms on that side. So we wouldn't expect to see you at the back of the building if you're on the green team or whatever that may be. And obviously some parameters just set around restroom use where there may be only 2 students entering at a time, as well as a specific schedule where we are, a staff will be sanitizing restrooms a little more frequently between uses throughout the day. All right. Miss Wallace, it looks like you have a question regarding athletics. Let's dive into it.
Okay, so it says, will students be able to come support events such as volleyball and football games during online learning? Or in what's the amount, or so how many kids can come to each game or so?
I'm with you. I think it was Mr. Keith earlier that said you guys are thinking right on the right track. So it is amount. And so our hope is that until we are provided any other direction from our local and our state representatives that give us this guidance, right now it is set at 50%. And word that it may be moving to about 20 to 25% capacity in our spaces. And they really only have looked at right now our outdoor spaces. As we know, football is coming up. They've given some guidance on volleyball games, et cetera. And so, however, what we also know is that percentage includes any of the support teams that would be there with them. So that 50% capacity in your football stadium, let's take that for example, would have to include your band, your drill team, all of those individuals that support our teams each week. And so it then shrinks down what our student capacity could look like. So we will continue to follow the guidance that is provided by UIL in that regard. but our hope is that the students that we can have access will. And the other thing, knowing that we all want to share our Crowley pride, unified, and be there. So we are really looking into some opportunities to streamline all of the games and activities as well. Not streamline, streaming. Telling you, y'all stretching us right now with this Facebook Live. So we're looking at how we can stream these games to our community as well. As far as the extracurricular courses and the CTE classes go, kind of extended on that. I know we've had a lot of questions centered around choir and band and many of our other programs as well. And so wherever there's an opportunity for us to offer that face-to-face, know that we are still exploring what those classrooms could look like so we can socially distance. Any opportunity that we can to do those things outside, that is the recommendation that we have received. So we still are looking at that. So our choir court classes may not be in that smaller choir room that we're accustomed to. We may be moving some of those risers and things outside so that we can still enjoy those courses in a manner that's safe. Same thing with our art classes, knowing that there are often many students that take art. We would be looking to move those into some of our larger spaces, such as a cafeteria, gym, etc. And so our athletic equipment, those who are directly involved in that will follow the same guidelines that we've been following with our strength and conditioning, where equipment is sanitized before and after activities. In most cases, spotters are provided, face shields, face masks will always be expected in each of these spaces. And so we will continue to follow those guidelines, both in our space, as well as you participate in anything that the CTE would offer as well. Dr. Mosley, you want to transition us into?
Yeah, so yeah, Dr. Berry, this takes us to leaving school, where Larry and Latoya have had a super exciting day at school. They've had great learning, but also have taken great measures to make sure that they are safe and making sure that they're being responsible and being safe with their peers. So Larry and Latoya get ready to pack up, and again, we've talked about them using those kid-friendly products that will allow them to sanitize their learning areas so that they've prepared it and prepped it for tomorrow. Larry will wait in his classroom until it's time for him to get on the bus and to head home. Remember that Larry is supervised on his way to the bus, that his classroom teacher or a building monitor will support him and his peers with walking to the bus area for dismissal, to the car rider line for dismissal, and making sure that the walkers also are supervised and walk out of some of our elementary buildings. And then again, we want to remind you that while on the bus, Larry and his friends remain socially distanced while they're on the bus, again, honoring the don't sit on wreck sign to make sure that they are seated in designated areas. Dr. Berry?
Just fine. We have talked about this, and I'm going to just go through quickly because we want to make sure we can transition to any more questions our panel has. Definitely, you have a pandemic response team on every campus that is looking at all of these, and that will be also sharing your questions and responses to this evening, that are preparing each of the areas in your building, such as a Be Well room. When students are not feeling so well, that will be separate from the nurse's office. So knowing that would be available. I know we have a question specifically related to that from Mr. Hunt. And so I'll let him go launch us into that and go from there, Ms. Diggles.
James, did you want to read this question or elaborate on this question at all?
Yes, ma'am. What would students do in the isolation room? In one of the meetings, one of the videos that y'all had, it talked about having an isolation room, and if one of the students got COVID, so they could wait for a parent to pick them up or wait till the day ended. My question is, would they be able to join the Zoom meeting so they could still be a part of the class? Or would they be able to do the schoolwork that the teacher gave them during class?
I love that. And we had not thought about what they did academically when they got there, because we were really focused on taking care of the student. So James, I think you just got those students an extra laptop in there where they can be still participating in their online learning. So we appreciate that thought and reflection. Absolutely.
Ashley Hobson, what about this question? You want to elaborate or read it for us?
Yes, so I was wondering, with online learning, how will academic integrity be kept with online learning students, and what programs will be used to ensure that this does take place?
So that's an additional question. So that question and this question's about SATs and ACTs, all those important things. It's okay. These are all important questions for our seniors. We want that academic integrity question. When I saw that again, I was like, curriculum and instruction. There you go, Mr. Keith.
All right. Well, I'll let Mr. Keith take the first, and then I'll jump in with SAT and ACT, or you can take both.
So we're definitely looking at how academic integrity works, because we know that we're required to have the same grading policy for virtual students and for students who are face-to-face. So we're looking at the same set of expectations, not always necessarily the same environment. And so we're working through what those protocols will look like. A lot of districts are moving to proctoring tests when students have to take a test, which means that your computer camera is on and the teacher is there making sure that you adhere to those academic integrity guidelines. But we'll continue to look at what our guidelines look like, and we'll come back with exactly what those will look like in a virtual setting.
And Ashley, our yearly events such as our college fairs, financial aid nights, SAT and ACT will still happen. That we, I think last year we went with the mantra delayed but not denied. So we're hoping to provide those things right now. We're already planning a college fair that is virtual. Colleges are anticipating logging on and doing some breakout sessions. The same thing with our financial aid nights. And we will be sending out a list of our SAT and ACT information if you haven't already received that. If you're a senior, you should have already received information regarding taking the SAT, as that will be coming very soon at the end of October, I believe. But we'll definitely get those dates out to you guys for the juniors that were not able to complete that. They're at the end of their junior year. We'll be addressing that first for our SAT, and then we'll do another round of SAT and ACT testing with all. So we don't plan to skip a beat in terms of what those tests will look like. It may look a little differently if you are 100% virtual at that time, because you will have to come to the campus to take those things, and we'll provide a testing area for you to do so. But it is our goal to continue to offer that, as we always have.
Ashton, I see you with your hand up. Did you want to ask another quick question?
Yes, ma'am. So at the seniors at Crowley High School, a lot of them have been asking me, like, how do we get that information for the ACT and the SAT? Because a lot of them don't know, and they want to get a jump start on that and like be prepared for it. So they just, you said that the information had been released to the seniors. Is there any way that they can find out like a link to that or get that information hands-on?
Perfect, Ashton. I will definitely, we have 2 advanced academic coordinators in our district that will be sharing some documents with the campuses, and I may circle back around with you directly just to make sure that that has gotten to their hands. So Mr. Munt will still be representative if you're familiar with him, and Ms. Wilkerson as well. And we'll make sure that we get all of that information to the campuses if it hasn't been received via social media and those pieces. But you're my link for the night. I'm gonna follow back up with you to see if you guys have seen that in the next day or two.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, seniors.
I think this is the last question and then we'll stop our PowerPoint. Mr. Strong, you had a question.
Yes. Hey, so my question will be, and I think this ties into my second one, so I have a two-part question. Will all organizations include limited to debate? Oh, I'm sorry, it's the presentation got pulled down, so.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is your debate question, Elijah.
Right. Will all organizations included but not limited to debate be afforded opportunities to have in-person practices? Can we take advantage of the hybrid learning style to practice a few times a week on campus?
Thank you for sure for those two questions kind of connected together. All of our organizations, whether that be debate, some of our clubs that we may not have specifically listed under athletics or band and so on, we hope to continue to explore the schedules so that could be a possibility of attendance. And we definitely have not said no to that possibility, but we want to be able to work that into the schedule where you could come in following the same guidelines that we utilize for our UIL participants. We would definitely want to be able to afford the same opportunity for our academic participants, including debate, choirs, clubs, organizations, et cetera. So thank you for reminding of that to us, and we'll put that on the shelf to consider as well.
Thank you, Dr. Berry.
Did you have another question, Mr. Strong?
Yes. Okay. Now with that, thank you, Ms. Diggles. With that comes, with last go around with virtual education, we were just, it took all of us by surprise. So my question would be, how would that transition look like if another outbreak were to take place? Would that same structuralization be easier for us to just go back home? Will it be structured around us bringing laptops to school every day and doing the work that way, so that, if it's a next day situation, we just go home and be ready to roll?
So I can jump in on that, Elijah, because that's an excellent question. So one thing that we want to be sure of this year is that we're ready for anything. And so that means, we're starting school virtually. And one thing we've been able to do up front is provide teachers with a lot more training on how to teach virtually, obviously, than we were able to do when we went from face-to-face to virtual in about 2 days. And so having teachers have that virtual experience up front in September is really huge, just to make that transition easier if there were another outbreak. So the tools that teachers are using to teach online during September, we're going to have them continue to use those even during in-person instruction, so that you have a place to go for those assignments if something were to happen like it did in the spring.
Couple more questions, and students, you can continue to put questions in the chat. I'll ask the questions that you have, but as you think of them and want to put them in the chat, feel free. This was a good one. Will seniors still have prom? Will all students still have homecoming?
Hey, I think I can answer that question.
Okay.
North Crowley, we personally paid for our prom on yesterday. Now, I cannot release the date, but we are anticipating that our prom will be here and everything will still go forward. So we're holding on to the optimism, and I just had to answer that question.
Right. We're going to go with Mr. Strong on that one then. We are holding on to the optimism. Absolutely.
Can I ask a question in addendum to that?
Yes, ma'am.
Because that was my original question, because I just want to reestablish something that I think was true in years past for CCA and maybe Global Prep as well, that CCA and other CTE program kids are going to go to the prom or homecoming that goes with their home campus, right?
Yes, that is definitely the plan.
Okay.
Unless CCA, you guys do a great job of pulling us in and saying we have this great idea, and we're always up to it. So absolutely.
Here's another question. What measures will be taken to ensure that questions from students will be answered in a timely manner?
So one of the things that we're shifting from spring to the fall is that turnaround time, because we know that y'all have questions when it comes to virtual learning, and we know you have questions just from day-to-day life and what you're learning in class. So one thing that will help is that you have those more frequent live interactions with your teachers during virtual learning, especially during the month of September. And then as we shift into October, where teachers may be balancing having face-to-face students and virtual students, we'll make sure there's a regular schedule of checking in to make sure that students are getting their questions addressed. And that kind of goes back to those office hours that we looked at in our original schedule presentation.
I'm going to flip this question. This is a question that was posed to us, but we're going to flip it. This was a good question. I think this was you, Mr. Strong. It sounds like you. In this time of change, we know that things are extremely challenging for all students and parties involved in education. What is the district's plan to engage students and to reach those who have become disconnected or not motivated? I want to flip that question and ask you students, what is the best way for us to engage students who have become disconnected throughout the pandemic, or who have lost their motivation or their desire to really move forward in their education? Mr. Strong, I see you unmuted. Was that your question?
Ms. Nichols, you did call me out, but that was my question. And so I would like to just talk on what I think, what some things that we've done as a senior class at North Crowley, and some things that I just want to give others the opportunity to think on. One of the many things we did was come up with an engagement plan to keep our class engaged, and how that looked like is we took 666 of our students that are active at the North Crowley campus, and we divided them into 3 teams. And of those 3 teams, we gave them an opportunity to come up with a senior class project, to stay connected, and that looks like taking advantage of those resources that are made available to us on campus. And we came up with a strategic plan to be connected with those resources such as CIS, and how they would look like from a virtual perspective, as well as those new college coaches that we have made available to us. So one of the many things I know that we can do is reach out, and just show up for one another. And I think that's an excellent opportunity that we have to do that.
I love that you guys are taking care of each other and taking ownership of one another. Your family, you're the North Crowley family. And so I love hearing that. What else? What other ways can we as a district make sure that all kids stay connected? Even in this moment, make sure that all kids get enrolled. James, I saw you unmute.
I saw Kennedy as well next.
Okay.
I'd say no one really told me this actually. I'd think the best way to keep us engaged would be get us something that we like. Ask the students, hey, what do y'all like? What are y'all's interests right now that are appropriate? How could we put those into our lessons that would make you happy to do these quickly and the best that you could.
Like that. Make sure that our lessons are engaging.
Mm-hmm.
What else? Who else unmuted?
It was Kennedy Jackson, I believe.
Yes, I had an idea for, maybe both high schools, but especially for the one that I go to, North Crowley. I was thinking maybe like do a questionnaire, and just get an intake on how students are feeling, like, daily. And for those who don't feel, they don't feel motivated anymore, to reach out to them and, really personally connect and see like, what can we do, together as a family, for teachers, for students, for everybody, to just make sure that we get through this, because we will. And then another one was like maybe we could do like team buddies, to where maybe we do partners, and like, we can do our work together online, and we can help each other, and just connect on a personal level.
I love that. This pandemic, it feels like it's disconnected us, but we're coming back together. And so I love that encouragement and just saying we're going to get through this. Um, Hopefully we're capturing these ideas. This is great. Anybody else? How can we motivate our students? How can we connect with our students? Um, and make sure everybody gets enrolled. It's kind of like the, no child left behind. This pandemic kind of scattered us all, sent us all home, but it's time for us to come back together. How do we do that? The comeback is one great idea that you all had, our board members. What else can we do? Any other ideas to bring our students, to bring our Crowley family back together?
I'm gonna add on to Kennedy's idea. Partnering with other people, trying to connect with them, getting them encouraged. Maybe doing it with a friend. Ask them, hey, who would you like to be partners with for this? And ask them how they're doing. Just try to stay connected with each other, help each other with work, like Kennedy said. Try to work together, and then maybe closer to the end of the year, stop that or make it year long. It depends on how the students feel about that and how the district feels about that idea.
I feel like it's a great idea. And we have upperclassmen on this call and our elementary students. So while our seniors are taking care of one another, they can reach down into the elementaries and the lower grade levels and do some partnership. I know Rose, go ahead. Rose had her hand up, and then we'll come to you, Mr. Strong.
So my answer to this question, maybe students could like work together to like talk about like problems that are going on in our world, like equality and justice and all that, or like their thoughts on everything. So
I think students need to be heard. And so when we give you all that opportunity, I think that's going to bring us together. Who was next? Ashton?
I believe it was Elijah.
Elijah and then Ashton. Yes, thank you.
So Ms. Diggles, one of the many things that we also discussed with Dr. McFarland, going back to those senior class projects is what's something that you can work on to make your community better or your school better. And one of the many things that he suggested that we should do was work on building benches for the elementary students. And so that's an available project. And how that look is reaching out to some of the younger elementaries. I'm thankful that you all included us on this. So, that's what that'll look like. Hey, I'm a senior, but I need some elementary students to hand me the nails or something like that. Again, there's safe ways that we can go about that, or many other opportunities that we can do, even if it's virtual, like a district-wide talent show, giving away a few prizes and stuff. So I think now is a great time to take advantage of the resources that are made available to us and utilize this platform for what it's designed for, to impact and to help one another out however, any way possible. And, and this is a start to it.
I agree.
Love that.
So we have our senior page for Crowley, like it's for seniors, but we had a DM or direct message for incoming sophomore who was Hispanic, and they didn't know. They tried to sign up for school and called the school, and the school wasn't able to help them, or they were unavailable to help them. So they contacted us for resources, and we were able to help them. But the question was like, how can we make resources more available for everyone? And so that typical type of scenario, she wouldn't have to go through us. She can have that already available for her.
Oh, that's good, Ashton.
Caitlin?
So at CCA, AVID is a mandatory class, which I know is very much not true for the high schools and the middle schools. But this AVID is made really to have that socio-emotional aspect right? But this year we have a sort of program where we have a mentorship program. So all of the seniors have freshman mentees to try to keep them on track and try to help them going virtual in their very first college classes, especially going from an 8th grader to doing college classes immediately starting yesterday. So we have that sort of mentee program going on. And I think just utilizing those programs that already exist, like Avid or similar programs, and trusting them that they can also like create ideas and come up with things to try to build that socio-emotional support for students would be a really great thing to do.
Awesome. That is great. It's 8:20, and so we have lined up a few closing thoughts from Elijah, I think is going to give us a closing thought, and also Kennedy. And then we're going to hear from Dr. McFarland. About 10 more minutes. You guys have really changed the game right about now. So we'll start with Kennedy Jackson.
Yes. So I just want to say that I think on behalf of my partners who I worked with, which is Elijah and Soraya, I think we as students are just grateful that we were able to voice our concerns. And I think that it was a real connection, you know, between administrators and superintendents, even the audience, parents are watching and stuff like that. So we just want to say thank you for hearing us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Elijah.
I just want to echo the same message from Kennedy. Ms. Diggles, Dr. Berry, Dr. Mosley, Mr. Kirchner, Mr. Keith, and Dr. McFarland, we thank you. You know, and I want to say this is what it takes, you know. And I'm thankful to be a part of a district that cares about the student voice, that cares to hear what we have to say and cares to keep us included as much as possible. And I just want to encourage you all as you go forward and continue to make decisions on behalf of us. We're rooting for you. We're looking unto you to provide us, you know, the hope for our futures. And we're excited about whatever, and we're grateful for the things that you are doing for us, for not giving up, for persevering. You know, even though you're promised a salary, it still takes more than that, especially during this pandemic. And you are a Crowley GOAT. You know, you're a Crowley GOAT. We thank you, and we love you.
Wow, that gives it a little bit more motivation. I'm ready to go to work tomorrow. All right.
Yeah, so you know, I've been called a lot of things, but a GOAT, I think that's a good thing, right?
Okay. Dr. McFarland, you're the greatest of all time.
Oh, okay, all right. Thank you for that interpretation, because I was wondering. You were smiling when you said it, so I said, okay, it must be a good thing. No, really, I want y'all to know that we see y'all, we hear you, and we recognize that the reason we do the reason why we do the jobs that we do is so that you all can have choices and opportunities when you graduate. And so I appreciate you all for just sharing openly your concerns. And really, together, we're going to make this a great year. I mean, 2020 is going to be a great year. We're going to make it that way because we're going to continually work together throughout this year. So I appreciate it. Let's stay in touch. Also, I do have this one request. What we know is that virtual learning starts on September 8th, and we have to know who actually is going to be here. And so we're in the process right now of trying to get people to register. So if you have not registered, please go online. It'll take it'll be a really short process, but you're just clicking, confirming that you're registering. Because once you confirm that you register, then we can start getting your schedule. But if you hadn't confirmed yet with us your intent to attend, then we don't know. Also, it'll ask you about whenever we start with on October 5th. We start our face-to-face and our virtual. If you're going to decide to do all virtual or face-to-face, we need to know that too. And so please take the time, even if you've been here for 12 years, you think we still need everyone to register. So take some time, go to our website, register, let us know that you need a device, let us know that you intend to come back to school, let us know that you intend to be face-to-face or virtual. You do that, and then we'll be ready for you on September 8th and also on October 5th. Appreciate it. Thank you all. Thank you, team, for pulling this together. And have a good night. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night, wonderful students.
Thank y'all. Y'all have a nice night.
Thank y'all for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.